Hey, welcome, and we are live. It's your boy Billy Rowe. Welcome to the first row. Normally, I'm not on at this time on a Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. However, tonight we have some bonus content. I told you there's going to be times where we just come on live, have a couple things we want to talk about. So tonight we have what's going on, $100 billion in reparations. Really quick, just to kind of lay out the platform for you, just in case you're unaware. There was some news that dropped this week about a potential presidential candidate that will be running. I believe her name is Marianne Williamson. And she talked about the importance of paying reparations. And the plan that she has is to present $100 billion in order to make amends for slavery. And that would be paid out over 10 years. So, me being the analyst that I am and the circle of friends that I have, I start crunching numbers to find out what does that really mean for us. And the numbers didn't come out to anything that I felt like was good. So in the midst of these conversations and meetings that I've had today, I've talked to a couple people. I have Terrellyn Singletary with us. Can you say hello, Terrellyn?
Hey, everybody.
And then the fan favorite, we have Cousin Moses Jenkins. Can you say hello to the people?
Mr. Controversy in the building.
Yes, sir. Mr. Controversy himself. We were supposed to actually have Antoine Wade of Black Heights with us. Unfortunately, something came up and he was not able to join us this evening. But stay tuned, because I'm sure Antoine Wade will have much more content that he'll be sharing in collaboration with the first row. But with that, let's talk about this $100 billion. So let's go to the numbers first that I crunched. What does $100 billion actually mean? Because the purpose of tonight's conversation is to kind of quelch the noise around large amounts of money that sound good, but what do they really mean when you start looking at the impact of that? So through a couple of researches that I've done today, I pulled some numbers, and I actually kept my numbers very conservative intentionally kept them very conservative to see what this actually means in regards to reparations. So I took data. If you know, you should know. Slavery started in 1619, I believe it was, ran into about 1865 for most people, kind of extended for some people who weren't notified of the change. But we're going to go from 1619 to 1865 for 246 years. There was the transatlantic slave route that was run, where slaves were dropped off in the Cayman Island, not the Cayman Islands, the Caribbean for sugar farms. They were dropped off in North America for cotton and a host of other things. But we're going to focus on North America because this is where reparations is being talked about. So when I started crunching the numbers, I actually started with roughly about 400,000 slaves in the United States in 1619. And what I did is I added a multiplier to kind of increase the population. Because as you know, during slavery, African Americans were actually treated almost as cattle. So it was like, how can I get a male and a female and breed them to get these people to produce more and more slaves that I don't have to pay for, because I have to pay for the first slaves, but the other ones I don't have to pay for. So what I did is I took the population and increased it by 4% until it maxed out at 3.9 million slaves, which is data taken from the census data in 1860. It said that the slave population was a little over 3.9 million people. So I just topped out at 3.9 million and left it at that. I took about $1 a day for wages. Because of the hourly rate back then, the hourly wage back then, it wasn't very high. The typical person probably made between, I think about, if my research was correct, for an unskilled labor position was like $5.88. But that was based on a 60-hour work week. I think you and I can all agree that slaves were working way more than 60 hours. So I just said if they made $1 a day for their work, and I increased that through inflation by, I think, 1.5% year over year, and then topped out at $2 a day. So I'm very conservative with my numbers. $2 a day was hit at year 46. There were still 200 years of slavery left to go. So that basically went from 200 years at $2 a day with the increase in population, what wages would be. Came out to a certain number. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit for how many slaves were actually, or how many Black Americans were actually caught up in slavery. And so you can understand the numbers of what the wages came out to. And I will actually tell you, the wages came out to over the time frame from the beginning of slavery to the end of slavery with the population, it came out to $506.6 billion in wages that went unpaid. And again, that's only at $2 a day. So that's a very conservative estimate. And so when I start off by saying, what's going on, $100 billion in reparations, what does that really mean? So I brought some heavy hitters with me tonight to kind of talk about that. I want to set that as the stage initially, let you guys start off with what your thoughts are on the topic, and we'll just kind of dive deeper and deeper. We got about, like I said, 30 minutes to 45 minutes on this topic. Hey, Brother Bruce, what's going on, Brother Key?
No.
So I'll start off. It is noise. It is absolute political pandering. It is a football that's on the field, that on the field of political play. It is one to tug at the heartstrings. And the way that I like to look at the noise is three ways. First is the transmission of the message or the transmission of the noise. The second is the reception of that message. Who's going to actually be there on the receiving end of it? And then third is the reaction to that noise. So before we can even respond, it has been transmitted by this candidate that, you know, reparations is something to at least have a conversation about. That could be taken one or two ways from the receiver. So we know when it comes to politics that there are a majority and then there are the minority. The minority might say it's about time that we at least have the conversation. Let's put it on the table. We know that there have been bills, there have been efforts. HR House Resolution 40 was on the table back in 2017 as something put out there to have a conversation around, just to do some studies and look into it. And this is when we were talking earlier, and I told you they used the number 4 million for slaves too. So your 3.9 is right about right. So you could have been an analyst for the, I don't know who did it though, the comptroller or whoever did it. But yeah, your numbers are right about right. The wages though is the thing that stood out to me. And I think that's really what's going to actually create the rift and the noise from those receiving it. They're going to ask, well, how will we pay for it? The Democrats voted like, what was it, like 36 or 35 folks signed on to be co-sponsors for House Resolution 40, which was just for the studying for reparations, just to study. Can we put together a commission to study the feasibility of reparations? Only 35 out of 435 House representatives, all of them Democrats. So when I say who's going to receive the message, then you know that it's going to be the Republicans who are going to receive it in that negative light, right? And so having that conversation, putting it on the table, what will be their objections? Remember, this is chess, not checkers. Their objections is the Republican Party standardizes no new taxes. That is the number one thing they're going to say, which we're going to pay for it, and we shouldn't have to pay for it because we weren't the ones who enslaved you. It was a long time ago. That's not us. And so being able to find a funding mechanism that makes sense. I think there may be some out there, but we'll just leave it on there as noise. And then finally, the reaction. If we're not going to be able to pay for it with the taxpayers' dollars, then the reaction can be one of two things. It can be vitriol, or it can be at least a tolerable conversation. Can we at least have that conversation? I think African Americans do have a cause to say, let's have the conversation. I think some of the other folks like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, who are also announcing their, or have announced their presidential runs, should also make that a part of their platform, at least the narrative. If they don't feel like they have an agenda that would open up to it, they should at least be willing to have that conversation. And then on the other end, I think that because there has been no bipartisanship receptivity to this conversation, that it should at least ruffle some feathers a little bit. The vitriol, on the other hand, we already know they don't want to tear down monuments, so they definitely don't want to tear down their financial status. So that's going to be one of those ones where we're going to have to go up against that backlash of those who want to protect white privilege at any cost. So that's my opening statement about those things. I'm going to pass it to my sister, Tara.
Go ahead, Carolyn. Dang, Moses is coming out swinging immediately.
Absolutely. And I mean, I agree with everything that he said. I think that opening the conversation is always a good thing. The problem is that if you're going to open the conversation, but you're not going to open the conversation by offering some things in place that would actually put a true monetary value on what slavery has meant for white folks and what it's cost black folks, then we're just shooting hot air. And at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is, in order to, and we could never be made whole. We can never be made whole. But if we're going to have a discussion, in order for anything that is remotely, and I hate even to use the word fair, but remotely just, In order for that to happen, that would mean that white privilege would have to be stripped away. They would have to hit some of those trust funds they have for their babies. They'd have to hit some of those college funds and some of the all of the riches that they have. And unless you have a conversation where that's going to be disrupted, then it's nothing but politics. It's nothing but politics, and it's just something to try to offer a pacifier to the Black nation for what whites have done with us with slavery. And then also, too, to add to what Moses was saying, when he was talking about, the different people who want to protect what they already have. That's always been an issue. You can't talk about reparations for us and be willing to protect anything that you got on the backs of us. That cannot happen. So I think part of reparations, part of the acknowledgement for what was done, is the willingness to strip some of what you live off of today. You may not have first generation did it, but you may not have first generation had anything to do with slavery. But the fact that because of what your ancestors did, you're enjoying the fruits of our labor today. Right. You can't say, well, that didn't have anything to do with us, yet you're enjoying the fruits of our labor. When Trump said something about with the furlough, oh, well, they should just go borrow money from their family members. Well, we don't have a lot of family members as a whole who have a bunch of money sitting up because of slavery. Right. We don't have that. So I think that there has to be not only a discussion that's open, but it has to be a discussion where from the jump, they're willing to strip down some of white privilege, starting with the money, because come on now, that's what starting with the money. You have to be willing to strip that down and take some losses. And if they're not willing to go there, then there really is no conversation.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that. You can't try to tear something down but protect it at the same time. You got to make up your mind. What is it that you want to do? And be willing to understand that the loss is the loss is because of the win that you got. I think the word is ill-begotten, that was gotten ill-begottenly. Is that the word? Yeah. So that is why there is a loss that's taking place, because the fact that the win wasn't on the up and up. Like, we can go to any professional sport, just professional sport. You could be like a 5-time Hall of Champion. We could actually go to Penn State, where that one coach, I forgot his name off the top of my head, but that one coach, they took all of his wins away from him based on his behavior with the athletes. So it's like, how can we see this in the sports world, that if you did something, you were manipulating youth and allegedly, which he ended up getting convicted of, sexually abusing youth to your benefit so that you can get them in a position or use them from the position of power you have? How can we see that that's wrong? However, we see slavery as this thing that took place. And it's like, again, I've heard many times where it's, you should just get over it. It happened so long ago. And I've even heard that from Black people, where it's like, oh, I'm not worried about reparations. Yeah, I'm not worried about reparations either. But if they're going to present something that is considered reparations, I want to make sure that they at least get it somewhat right.
Exactly.
So that leads me to a quote I really want to throw in. I got to make sure I throw this in before we even go any further. This is a quote from Malcolm X. It's one of my favorite quotes from him. It says, "If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it out all the way, pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made, and they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less healed the wound. They won't even admit that the knife is there in the first place." And that is the craziness of trying to approach something without admitting something. And I feel like in a lot of these reparation conversations, though I will say Marianne, or I think it's Marianne, said it, that, hey, this is a scar on our country that needs to be addressed. So I think she's willing to acknowledge it. However, when you start doing the math figures on what the acknowledgement that she's proposing, it's like, okay, so like all in all, once I did this math today, I'm gonna tell you what it came down to. So we're talking $100 billion that is going to be spread out over the course of 10 years. So really, we're talking about $10 billion over the course, $10 billion a year. With the current African American population in the United States being, since the last census in 2010, being 42 million people, that $10 billion a year really comes out to $238 a year. I don't know about y'all budgets, but $238 a year is not going to sway the tide one way or
But
the other.
but Ro, less than that, because you know that 238 is going to be taxed. But we'll get back to the taxes later.
Right. And
You know they
get
taxing
some
that.
back. And you got to get some
You
back.
couldn't support your cat off of that for a year. Are you kidding me?
Right. So I look at these things, and that's just from that perspective. But let's go a step further, because outside of the monetary, what is also being proposed, which this is definitely far from being written into any type of law or being creating a bill, but what's being proposed is $100 billion to be given to special committees who are then responsible to disseminate that wealth into the African American community in order to make amends for slavery. Now, my immediate question becomes, well, who gets to make the decisions of who gets the funds and who doesn't? Who also gets to make the decisions of where those funds go and who's on the special committee? So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of loopholes, and I get it. It's just the beginning of the conversation, but there's a lot of holes that can quickly be poked into $100 billion in reparations. So I just want to throw that out there. When it comes to the monetary aspect, I want to ask you guys both a question. When it comes to the monetary aspect, when you look at $238, which is equivalent over 10 years, is $2,380 that you would get for the descendants of your family who were impacted or worked in the slave trade. And I don't mean on the side that was making the money. But when you're looking at those funds, what else is missing from just, even let's say if the back wages was $2,000, what else would be missing from that reparations package that's not being addressed? Cousin Mo, I feel like your eyes are saying I got so much to say. Go ahead.
Yep.
Absolutely. So first you tell me $20 a month. $20 a month. Like, we can't count now. Like, something happened. They knew we shouldn't have got an education because now we can count $20 a month. Come on, man. Is that should already make everyone laugh and say, okay, she's not really serious. It was just noise. But then they're going to distribute it to an organization or a number of organizations, which means operating costs. So I don't even get the full dub. They won't even give it to me. So what am I going to get? $1.19 and some change per month for the next 10 years? That's not significant. So outside of that, even if they do, I remember I was reading, what was the book? The W.E.B. Du Bois book, The Souls of Black Folks. Chapter 2 was talking about the Freedmen's Bureau, and they were looking at education as a means towards, answering that question, what do we do with these Negroes? And so education, creating those institutions, having the government play a role in establishing, those banks and those educational places where they can go to, should they be able to walk 20 miles both ways uphill in order to attend these classes when they were getting off of the sharecropper or the tenant fields where they were working every day. I digress. That type of attitude seems to be over 100 years later. They still think that the administration of reparations or the administration of an empowering initiative like reparations can be legitimized through a talented tenth. It can be managed, administered by a talented tenth. Those who are educated. Can it be the Congressional Black Caucus? I still say no, because when only 35 people sign House Resolution 40 in 3 years or 2 years, that's not even all of the seat of the Congressional Black Caucus. Not all of them are even on board with reparations or the idea that there needs to be at least a study on it, or at least the conversation opening up in the higher levels of Congress. And so I think that more appropriately, this bill for the next 2 years, or this proposal, this platform rather, is just something to at least get them some firepower in their conversations, something for their water cooler, something for their PTA meetings, something for the golf course, whether it's the vitriol that they get that still keeps it flourishing, or it's the receptivity of those who do suffer from a little bit of white guilt. It is something to get the conversation out there. Nothing more, nothing less, unless they're talking about opening up some land where agriculture can happen. The government was complicit in the slave trade. They played a role. They had laws, code black Jim Crow laws. They had a whole bunch of anti-miscegenation laws, things that played on the psyche, the Fugitive Slave Act. They had the commerce being given to Congress, or the right to regulate commerce being given to Congress, or the rights of the state to determine. I mean, there was so much complicitness by the government that it's not a person to person, a private citizen to private citizen. We don't have to sue those who enslaved us. Our gripe is actually, or our complaint is a legal one against the government. So thus the government, with all of these hundreds of millions of acres of land, can open up more than money, more than the federal treasury. They can also open up some land. And then, what is it? The last point, 27 of our states have looked at medicinal marijuana. That can be an industry that supports the growth or the movement away from incarceration, away from the slums of the ghetto, away from the housing market crash, away from the dilapidated or the condition of the public schools, but moving us back into a space of dominance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just going a bit further with what Mo was just saying, the government's involvement, just offering money for the work. What about the pain and suffering? Come on now. We all know the atrocities of slavery and how we as a people, our babies, our families just torn apart, all of the things that happen, taking and just saying, well, okay, we'll acknowledge that you worked some and you should have got paid. That's nothing. That's not significant. How do you make right all of the people who were just killed and torn apart, the men, women, and children raped, the atrocities that happened to the people, a lot of which, some of the mental ramifications, the mind, body, and spirit, the emotional ramifications of that plague us today. I mean, if you really just want to go all the way there with this topic and with this conversation, slavery was actually never abolished. It was just redesigned. Let's talk about the prison industry today. Who's benefiting from that? Who's benefiting from that if we just gonna go there, So redesigning it and only wanting to cut it off at a certain point, because again, they wrote the books, so they get to write the beginning, middle, and the end of the story. Lies, we know that. So if you just want to talk about it today, it was just redesigned. So actually it never stopped. So all of the people of color who are targeted, because for everybody that you lock up, there's money that's lying in the government's pocket, the same government who designed slavery and put laws in place to keep slavery and us in place so that they could get money for nothing. The whole redesigning of slavery was just to quiet our mouths, but we've been paying for the day in which we said, you know what, we're not going to work for free anymore. Well, how dare you niggas say that? So we're going to find a way to keep you enslaved. So what we'll do, because they never really thought of us as being intellectual independently. They thought of us as a source that they could use. Right. But like you said, we're sitting here tonight because what is it? A brother's doing the numbers. Right.
You
know what I'm saying? So it's one of those types of things where it's so very multi-layered. And I think, Ro, when you were talking earlier about a lot of people that just say, I don't want to talk about reparations, whatever. I'm good with where I am today. I get that, because when you're in a situation and in a system that has been designed in the way that it has, I think it's so many different layers that people just feel like anything we say or do is really not going to make a difference. So what they do is just the best that they can with whatever it is that they've chosen to do. If it's entrepreneurship, if it's whatever regular 9 to 5 that they're working, they take what they can get and just go with it, because that seems easier given the multi-layered way in which this whole thing is now, because of slavery and because of white people's inability to acknowledge what happened. So that's why you see a lot of people just throw up their hands and say, you know what, I just really don't want to deal with it. But I think that since they put it out there, and they put it in a political forum, now is the time for people to really and truly, for us as a people, to band together and to really and truly start to speak. Since you opened up dialogue in a political forum, what would be a great place to start? And what was offered here is just absolutely preposterous.
Right. Exactly. And one of the things you said there, as far as really having that dead horse mentality, people just are fatigued. They're exhausted. And it's like, look, if there's not going to be any progress in something, I myself am not committing any energy to it. And so I agree. But I also, on the other hand of that, the devil's advocate to that is, well, if we are not having these conversations, whether with our children or with our intellectuals or with our communities, if we're not having these conversations, how do we get to a place of healing? One of the things Bruce said up here is what's missing is our last name and our place of origin. I think Future also said our place of origin. So when you're missing so much historical reference and cultural reference, like shoot, even lineage. When you're missing those things, it's very difficult to understand, like, hey, well, what are the mistakes that we made in the past that we don't even want that we don't want to make again? It's like, well, heck, we just, only mistake I could say we really don't want to make again right now is the destruction of crack cocaine in our families, tearing our families apart, like incarceration, tearing our families apart. But going beyond that to say, okay, if we get to a place of revival and of healing, how do we move forward and have those leaders in our community leading the way and keeping us from the pitfalls that we have experienced historically before we got to this continent? And it's really hard to say, oh, well, you should do X, Y, and Z when you don't even know where X, Y, and Z is, where X, Y, and Z started. And I will, in all fairness, because I've had plenty of conversations about this today, I will say there were Black people who owned slaves back then. So it's not just, oh, well, you know, the white man was the government. So he has that. There weren't any Black people in politics back then, but there were Black slave owners. So how do you now incorporate that? The issue is so complex that it's like, you know, everybody of these 42 million people may not be qualified. They might need to, you know, pay the special tax to pay for the reparations for all we know, but from lineage. But there's been so much jumbling and so many mixing of the cups to hide the ball that it's like, well, heck, we don't know who was on whose side, who was on what. One of the things you said earlier, Cousin Mo, about as far as the flip-flop game of, well, first the Republicans were supporting the Black vote, then the Democrats did, and now it's just flip-flop back and forth. And I feel like one of the things you said earlier, Cousin Moses, was really, is this just a ploy to create noise to gain votes? And I feel like our people from the voting platform, even though there's some things I feel like the votes don't really sway one way or the other, but from the voting platform, I feel like there is a level of education and a responsibility that we have to understand what is going on, what is taking place. So we're not just like, well, you know, Barack didn't get us reparations, but this lady's talking reparations, I'm voting for her. Come on, like, be smarter, hold yourself to a higher caliber. Really quick, George, you said send the link. I don't know what link you want me to send. Can you clarify what that is? There's a couple things in the chat I want to bring in. And we are already, Carolyn, at 30 minutes. So I just letting you know, timestamp. Yeah.
You know, Ro, I appreciate you.
I got you.
George is probably talking about the link to come to join the panel.
Oh, is that what he's talking about? Do you know him, Cousin Mo? I don't know him like that.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Oh, okay. You vouch for him. Don't make me have to boot him. You know, I'll send somebody to the rafters.
Yeah, you might have to boot George. That dude is irie. That boy is very irie.
You have the Sandman Sims him, huh?
He's what is he? I think he's Black and, like, is it Cuban or something like that? So, you know, he has that fighter spirit inside of him, well educated, but he comes from a space of love that I really like to hear when he goes in. But the boy does go in. The man does go in. So yeah, that's
all
my
right.
guy.
If you say he's your guy, hey, George, I just need you to confirm that you will behave and not be wilding out.
Look, he says down there that he thought it was Moses' channel. He was gonna go in. Completely wild out is what he was going to do.
Right. Really quick, I got Future here saying enslaving us through the music, the education system, the environmental pollution in poor Black communities, reading, etc. So much and so overwhelming. The monetary value isn't even conceivable. Man, that's a very powerful point. Very powerful point. And George, I'm still waiting for you to confirm. I'm always on my best behavior. All right, don't have me eject you. You will be able to come back to the first row tonight. Don't play with me. Let me see. Moses, can you send him the link? I don't know how to send him the link because I don't have his contact information.
Yeah, let me see.
Oh, there we go. He just popped it up. Never mind.
Okay.
But what are your thoughts on that, Carolyn, as far as what Future is saying, as far as trying to conceive the amount based on the insurmountable damage that was caused by the atrocities of slavery?
Well, that's the reason why I said the only way to begin this discussion is for the government to offer something that would disrupt white privilege. If they're not losing anything, then there's really no discussion. They have to give up the comforts that they have acquired off our backs. And if that's not happening, then there's really no discussion. What it's doing is just pacifying you, because if we can get them to accept anything, then we can always say that we offered something and they accepted it. It's kind of like if you don't agree, if you have a dispute, I don't know, with your insurance company about the amount of an amount that you're owed. You can argue that when you go to court, as long as you don't deposit that check.
Exactly.
The moment you deposit that check, there is no conversation. So
Right.
if they can get us to deposit the check for these little scraps that they want to try to give us, you know, and take and divide what they feel like we should be paid for, not the totality of what happened. If they can get us to accept that as a people, then now that conversation's done. You've already been paid. No, it needs to disrupt privilege. It needs to
be disrupted.
Exactly. It needs to disrupt it, and it needs to make it so, wow, we'll never be made whole. We'll never be made whole. But it needs to be to a space where when they get finished with what they're giving the Black nation, their lives have now changed and government is restructured. Because if we just really want to be like, go all into slavery, let's just talk about how rates for loans and all of that, that's impacted. It's completely and totally different for us than what it is for them. Everything about this government is designed around giving white folks an edge up, because how dare those uppity niggas say they don't want to work for free anymore.
Right.
So we're going to imprison them. We're going to do all of these different things. So sorry, bro, I'd be going for days.
We're not even going to go into land grants and stuff that were given at the time. We're not going to go into any of that, because I mean, what do you mean I could just sit on some land for a couple of years, make sure it's protected and, you know, treat it well, and then it's mine? No money down, no money at all.
Barbed wire fence act. If you can put a barbed wire fence around it, it's yours. Like, what? I know how to do perimeter. If I can't count nothing else, I can do a perimeter.
That is the critical lay. My land, lay.
Let me hit you with one more, brother Ro. Cousin Ro, let me hit you with one more. So $20 a month. We've already got to that point, right? So let's take it and break it down to the next two layers. You're probably going to work 20 days a month. So $20 a month divided by 20 days gives you that same dollar that they were made in their entire day. So let's divide that 20 by the 8 hours that you're typically going to work a day. They're talking about an increase of 12 cents per hour on your paycheck for the slavery that happened for over 246 years. Let that sink in. You're not only getting the same dollar, but what they're actually referring to, and this is even without the administrative and operating costs of the freedmen or the modern day Freedmen's Bureau taking over the administration of this. So let's put all that aside and let's just say each African American who can prove their descendants of slaves. I don't even know. Did we say we have to even prove that we're descendants of slaves?
We didn't get to that part. We didn't get there.
Let's just say us. They ain't even gonna nitpick. They're gonna say you look black. Your mama look black, so we're gonna give it to you. But that is 12 cents an hour.
Right. Here's my question is, how many people gonna start checking that box with instead of other? They gonna be like, no, black. They all of a sudden everybody gonna want to be something that they wasn't really wanting to be before. One of the things I will say though, and this is, it's funny to say in fairness, but I believe in fairness. What's going on, George? Man, you making me look small in the chat. But one of the things I will say is, what I'm not saying is that we need to tear apart white families. We need to make them suffer like us. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not looking for retribution. I'm looking for justice and to be made whole. And in many cases, I understand that it's never just somebody else's responsibility to make me whole. That's also my responsibility. So in my theory, it's also, what are we willing to do as a community? Should we get some resources? What are we willing to do as a community to make those healthier communities for ourselves? One of the things, Mo, growing up in Del Paso Heights, I never knew what it was to have like a brand name grocery store in my community. And maybe it's okay that I don't have that, but then I should be able to have something that's able to provide me healthy food, not bottom of the barrel vegetables and produce, something that's going to allow me to be healthy and avoid some of the elements or the ailments that we experience from having these poor diets and poor nutrition, lack of focus in school. You got obese children because kids don't go outside and play anymore. You got all kinds of things that are also compacting on top of this issue that I'm not saying need to be revisited upon white America, but I am saying they need to be addressed in our communities. And I do believe that that is our responsibility to do so. Crack is still making waves, but it's making ripples. It's not making waves anymore. I think people are a lot more intelligent about crack cocaine. Crack is whack. Let's not do that. But at the same time, what are we doing to remove some of the liquor stores? Like, why do we feel like there's a number one? You're in a PTSD or PSTD. PTSD. Wrong acronym. PTSD environment where you're stressing all the time, and every other corner there's a liquor store. So of course you go in there as a young child who's not on game as far as getting healthy food, and you buy now laters and lollipops and chips and Funyuns and ice cream, all the things that are not healthy for you, and you get a habit and a pattern of going in and seeing and being exposed to this alcohol. So then when you start stressing and you're an adult and you can go in and do it, now you go in and now laters aren't going to deal with the stress that you're dealing with in this environment. So now you're grabbing the Old English 800. Now you're grabbing the Hennessy. Now you're grabbing the alcohol contents to try to dull and remove some of the pain that you're experiencing and from the pressures of the environment that you're in. So that's one of the things. Brother George, I want to welcome you to the first row. This is the first time I brought somebody on here live. Don't make me regret it, and don't make me never do it again. But welcome to the channel, my brother. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, damn, Moses, you got the brother thinking I'm a bad guy. Oh, man. You got to check out the George Macon show, man. Moses, that's one of my partners on it. That's what we do. All right, I'll check you out. Yeah, we bring this heat. One thing Black people got to do in America is we have to be uncompromising. We have to learn to be uncompromising. We have to learn to say, I mean, honestly, listen, to hell with everybody else. We got to treat the system the way we treat each other. That's the only way we get something done. We got to stop worrying about everybody else. We got to walk in with our chests out and our chin in the air and saying, listen, this is what happened to us. I don't give a darn about what this person got to do, what they got to do. Because at the end of the day, after slavery, under the Constitution, Jim Crow happened. Plessy versus Ferguson happened. Redlining into ghettos happened. The Holocaust happened. The burning down of major Black cities across America from 1865 all the way up to the 50s. So these are things that happened that kept us out of the economic loop. It was a time after slavery where we had places in the South that was doing good, but when they burned our cities down, they forced us to have to move to the North to get factory jobs. When those factory jobs moved out, we lived to this day. We're living in cities where they benefit us none. We living in concrete jungles. I'm from the East Coast, the northeast region of the country where the majority of the people live. We live. I mean, you literally Philadelphia. 1.8 million people on 122 square miles of land. We stacked on like sardines.
Going up.
You can only imagine what the crack epidemic did to places like Philadelphia, New York, Boston, where we live on top of each other. That's why when they made movies like New Jack City, they based it on the East Coast because we were stacked on top of each other. But the government not going to take full blame of that. They're going to blame it on the cartels. Man, that's bullcrap.
Right.
We know what the government was complicit in, allowing these drugs to come into these neighborhoods, make the property value plummet. 20 to 25 years later, come back in, gentrify it out, move these people out. So the government has always been complicit in our demise and our destruction. I don't give a darn about who would be eligible because they didn't do that with the Jews. When in the 40s, when they created that land for Israel, they created that land where Jews could repatriate back to Israel from all different parts, and none of them look like us.
Right.
Unfortunately, none of them look like us. Majority of them was Russian converts that was coming in from and other places coming in from many different parts of the land. So no, we have to be uncompromising. One thing I always tell Black people, man, we here in the Western Hemisphere, we suffered the shortest slavery in the history of slavery because we was always uncompromising. We was always vigilant. We was always fighting. The problem is, and Moses know, I teach a lot of history on my page, and I break down. We don't know our history. They don't teach you the rebellions that we had that forced their hand. They give you stuff like Eli Whitley created the cotton gin, and that's why slavery ended. No, that's not. Slavery ended. They couldn't control us. They was losing. They was beginning to lose more money than they were making because of the insurrections. But they're not going to teach you that. So we have to understand all the things that we invented, all the things that so many things that we've invented that we brought to the table. If we just think for a minute and say, you know what, listen, man, we want what we want, because we just gonna pull out and stop inventing things for you guys. If they never had the Negro people in America, it wouldn't even be in America. That's why they stole us in the first place. Right. But we gotta stop loving everybody before we love each other. I just say this one last thing. It's 50 million so-called, that's what they say. I believe it's more of us than that, but they say it's 50 million Negro people here in America. Well, I was always told you only need a few to help the many. So let's just say to 2% begin to wake up, because I don't need all 50 million to wake up at the same time, but I need 2% to wake up. So out of that 50 million, that would be 1 million people. That 2%. I need 1 million people across America to wake up and begin to create things where the rest of the group can begin to buy. The only way we're going to get respected is if we create some type of economic surplus for our people that we bring to the table, where they would be forced to respect us. That's why they kept us out of the economic loop for so long, because they knew that they would always have to have the same argument of reparations. Jamaica's doing the same thing to the British government. Cuba's doing the same thing to Spain. This is something widespread throughout the diaspora. But until we get an economic and nobody's stopping us from getting economic surplus, we can actually have it. It's 50 million of us. If Moses creates something right now, and he was able to get black people to invest in it, and when we had any type of cultural pride, what would stop 50,000 black people from buying it? Because it's Moses. We don't lost our cultural pride. That's the problem. We get cultural pride. We got our cultural pride back, and we was able to move just like the Jews, never again, uncompromising. We will have our reparations. We don't have that never again. We need to have a never again slogan. If you tell me, oh, that was a long time ago, get over it, that's equivalent to being anti-Semitic. You don't have the right to ever tell me to get over something where my ancestors was brought to a land that they didn't ask to come to, and was forced to be under a law and a constitution that they never asked. So you don't have a right to tell me to get over something. But we the only group of people, a lot of black people say I'm American first, but you never hear Asians say that.
Right. I'll be an Asian American, but I ain't gonna be an American Asian.
Right. Right. So we got to get out of that mindset. If we African Americans, then be vigilant with it. And if you say anything as far as telling me to get over, or that was a long time ago, that's equivalent to being anti-Semitic. I'm offended and I want action taken, because we got to move that way.
You know what? Thank you, George. I appreciate you coming on, man. You already got people in here loving the fact that you're on the panel. You ain't making me regret it. So I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you, and I agree with what you're saying. But instead of me jumping in, I want somebody else to be able to jump in on this conversation. Carolyn, we at 8:43, so we about 45 minutes in. We got like 15 more minutes, but you might jump off, and we'll still be in them.
I kind of get the feeling that's the way it's gonna go down. It's all good, bro. But yeah, I totally agree with what he said. With what George said, we have lost pride in us as a people, just as brothers and sisters toward each other. And let's just say that this whole reparation talk was to go to a space where there was an offer on the table, which wasn't laughable. We're so divided as a community. Would we really be able to do what we needed to do with what we got? You know, to take and have some type of foundation that's our own. And when I say foundation, just some type of stability that we start to build as a people, you know, so that now we do have something of our own, and we do have something that we can pass down, something that the Black community heads and that's fledgling and that we're proud of. So yeah, I mean, the division amongst us is painful. It really is. And it's something that has to be addressed. Would this necessarily be a starting point for us as a people? I don't know. But there definitely has to be a conversation aside from reparations with the government, us as a people, and getting back to a space where we respect and are proud of what it means to be Black. Because I think a lot of us have really and truly lost that.
One of the things here in the chat is from, actually a Black libertarian. She said 100 billion in reparations is laughable. So she 100% agrees with you. I think that's a she. I can't see in the picture. Then here underneath that, we have Key says, how about real housing programs that give African Americans a loan program that gives them 20% down that never needs to be paid back, along with the interest rate of 1% lower than the market rate. Bruce says, as a community, our priorities are in the wrong places. And Jerry says, not all, but some, probably even the majority, have their, I think, priorities in the wrong places. I think that's what he's saying. No, I agree. And when it comes to money, I'm a fan. I would rather have land than money, because money does not typically appreciate in the sense that land does. And this is why I say, $238 a year, or as Moses would say, what was that? 12 cents an hour, cousin
12 cents an hour.
12 cents an hour added to my hourly rate. Give me the land, something that I can hold on to, that I can hand down. I can't hand down my 12 cents an hour. I make a certain hourly rate at my job. I can't hand that down to my sons. If they're not working the job, they don't get that income. Now, I have some policies in place that if something happens to me, they'll get some money. But that is not the same as me saying, you know what, the house that your mother and I have invested in, that is your guys' house to not take and sell, but to keep and add on to your legacy. So when you have your house, you'll have a rental property already established. And that is what I'm trying to teach my kids now, is hold on to the houses, hold on to the land, because as that continues to appreciate, I looked at my house just the other day, my house almost has 100,000 in equity in it. And it's like, as that appreciates, I can only think of what that would have looked like had I had some ancestors who got some land back in the day and chose not to sell it. Because we all know there's people who would have sold their land and been like, cool, I got some land, I'm selling it, I'm gonna keep me 1 acre, and I'm not really worried about this history or my next generation. And that comes from a completely different places. That can come from the place of I never had before. So now because I have, I want to ball out. Like you see this happen in the NBA. People go and make $1 million. They go and make $500,000 and they lose their damn mind. Just because they now have money and they've gone so long without, now they're buying, instead of dime bags of weed, they're buying pounds of weed instead of, we seen this happen with John Jones, Bones Jones from the UFC. You get in a car accident, you run back, and you're not running back to see if anybody's okay or thinking I'm John Jones, they're going to know who I am. You're running back to grab a duffel bag full of weed. You have millions and millions and millions of dollars, and you, for some reason, feel the need to roll around with that much marijuana on you. I don't understand it. I don't smoke, so that's probably why I don't understand it. Maybe you need that much, but I'm not running back in a car accident to the scene. I'm not running from a car accident scene, but if I was, I'm not running back for anything in the car, period, point blank. Moses, what do you got to add?
So yeah, I like the idea that the brother put into the chat that $12 an hour does not make up for the psychological damage that one experiences through those lenses, through the education, the miseducation that is. Brother George points out that the history of African-American inventors, everything down from the refrigerator or the refrigeration system to the components of the cell phone and the television to the sciences. There was a lot of education that we could emulate if only we saw our images inside of those books. Also, the brother who said about the housing and then the housing rates at the principle, I like the idea that the banks have to be involved, that there has to be something along the lines of, Bank of America was complicit, and even their subsidiary banks back in the day were complicit. So that private sector that would not allow for loans all the way throughout those years, or that would allow slaves to be used as collateral. Which means, what is the next level? Insurance. Is my 12 cents a day, can I allocate 3 cents a day just for insurance for my family now, or nah? How can I actually make these things work in the best interest of our people? I bring up medicinal marijuana because it is a cash crop. because there is this whole conversation about the legalization coming in, because what would you do with your land in the first place besides let it sit furlough? And then because there is right now there's some traction around this idea that 1 in 3 African-American men will be locked up in their lifetime, that even on the Republican side, they can be receptive to that and say, well, you know what, that doesn't seem right. That a mixed what is it? A black man with a white woman, the black man will be searched and seized, and they will pat him down, and the white woman could be the one who actually has the marijuana in her purse, and that's his woman, but they will never search her. I mean, and so this idea of parity or equity in judicial or in the legal system, there's already a conversation that's happening about that. And so being able to counterbalance these things that are going on politically with what's going on socially, and then have that conversation about reparations, which is economically, I think that at least keeps the narrative going in a forward and positive space without having to introduce too much of the toxic things that one might assume. So there was a lot that we could bring in: the psychological damage, the condition of our communities, the condition of our marriages and our homes, the condition of our minds, that we can start to address by just starting with the conversation. It won't just be a conversation though, but we absolutely need to have some action and some momentum on what are the next steps from the conversation. That's another day though. So
that is another day. Hey, Brother George, what do you want to add to that?
I would just say that something I tell my people that come, on my channel, we got to stop thinking that we're going to wake all 50 million Negroes up at the same time. That's not going to happen. What we got to do is we got to create a new type of leadership going forward to lead the people. Any nation you go to, everybody in that nation is not woke. They follow along the laws and the rules that the people create for them. We walk around thinking that a bunch of all these white people is just smart. No, they're not. No, they follow the rules. So no, that's why I said you only need about 2%, the little, to make things happen. We need leadership. Two things. We got to stop thinking that black people don't have money. Black people actually listen. If you go out to middle America or outside like the major cities, like in your state, and go into like just ride through the state, you see a lot of poor white folks living in trailer homes, shopping at Dollar Generals and all these different things, and they don't have no money. But America, the media don't show them. They never show them. They go into the military, and a lot of them join militia groups, and they ride around in trucks smoking Marlboros all day. They work in refineries. They don't have any money. We actually live better than the majority of them. Our only problem is we don't have any sense of economics. We're the big. See, we can't be the biggest consumers in this country and don't have no money. That don't make sense. Then how can we consume if we don't have any money?
Right.
So we make a lot of money. We buy cars, we buy red bottom shoes, we buy leather jackets, we buy all these different things. The problem is we're not mass producing nothing where the money is coming back within our communities. So I do a series where I do a history of African-American inventors, and I show how we needed reparations, but if we never got reparations, we just got our justice and just due for all our inventions, we would still be the richest black people on the planet, because we created so much stuff that's moving everything today. But we don't realize the things that we created. Now, when it comes to this reparations thing, I want land, but I also want a military, because I gotta be able to see. We gotta know how to negotiate. I want to be able to control mines. Now, what I had a thing where I remember Field Order 15 when 26 pastors met with General Stanton and Sherman after the war. And they asked for 400,000 acres of land from South Carolina through Florida. And it was granted to them, but Lincoln was killed. And once Lincoln was killed, President Johnson rescinded it. And a lot of them was sent back into slavery and sharecropping. That's part of history they like to keep silent. Right. But we were supposed to have that land. Now, my what I would say is I want land from South Carolina through Alabama. When you look at the state of Alabama, it's the same size as the state of Pennsylvania, but it only has 4 million people in it. Like literally nobody lives in. People live in the major cities, but nobody lives there. Alabama the state of Mississippi has 4 million people. The state of Louisiana, that big boot, only has 6 million people. Pennsylvania has 13 million people. And there's still a lot of open land when you ride through Pennsylvania. So the thing is, I want us to have land of our own from South Carolina through Alabama that we can develop and we can build an economic system. And then I want them to, the same way they negotiated, well, they didn't really negotiate it, they actually took it, President Wilson. And then when they created Israel, I want them to negotiate something with Africa and create a land where we can go. And we can go with our own military, and it can be our land where we can do business and we can begin to help with our skills and resources to help rebuild Africa. Us, they can send 2 million of us over there. That's the best thing that they can do for us. We need a trained military that's going back to Africa that can take the skill sets there to do business, and we need land here. Other than that, reparations ain't going to do us no good, because if we don't have a military to protect our interests, and you gotta negotiate in this world. There is no where we just saying, okay, well, the white man is the full enemy, when you got to negotiate with that white man to get what you need. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So you got to sit at the table and you got to negotiate with that person to get the things you need. So we need groups of people going back to Africa on land of our own to acquire resources, help out certain African nations, and create resources for our people back here in America. If we're not doing that with the military, then we don't have anything, because we got to be able to protect ourselves if America ever fell, because we still live here. If somebody invaded America, guess who's gonna have to help the white man in America? Us.
Gonna have to fight that battle again.
Our people is here. So we got to get up past the emotionalism and think going forward. But if we don't have a standing military to protect our own, reparations don't mean nothing, because they can come take it back whenever they feel like.
Yeah, that reminds me historically when the Native Americans laid their weapons down, and it was like, okay, great, they laid their weapons down, now shoot them. Like, what? Hold on, so you negotiate for us to lay our weapons down, and now is you shoot us. Okay. One of the things I want to ask you, Carolyn, because I know you're going to have to go soon, with what Brother George was talking about from the leadership perspective, even if we just talk about being in the political climate that we're in here in America, and kind of resonates with what Cousin Mo was saying as well. What are your thoughts when it comes to like the Black leadership that goes into politics, that instead of trying to create change, I understand there's some negotiation that has to take place, but instead of trying to be that voice or that change agent, they go in and they assimilate and get comfortable in that particular role. And then it's like, oh, well, all those other people who are still stacked on top of each other in Philly, I don't really, feel like I'm one of them. I'm a little different, so I can't really fight that fight for them and really speak to their plight.
When it comes to it, I'm just going to say what it is that I'm thinking. And at the end of the day, when it comes to a situation like this, I really don't think, and this is no disrespect to the Black folks that we have in politics. We have some really good people that are working in politics. But at the end of the day, the political machine is about, I'll take on this cause to help, but what am I getting from it? And right. Anytime there's something that the individual, there's an agenda there. And the thing about it with politics is you don't always know what their individual agenda is until after the deal is made. And then you start to see what they personally benefited from it. I don't think that if we're talking about moving forward, we should have anybody in the political forum as the representation of Black people as a whole. That now, how that would be restructured, where we would go from there, I'm really not sure. That's something that I have to take some time to maybe ponder a little bit deeper. But I think that someone that's already in politics is not going to be an answer for the Black nation. I just don't think that. I mean, we have years and years and years and years of years to show us that typically does not work. And that's because it's always going to get to a space from what the individual is going to get. Now, I will say, in terms of unifying the Black community, one thing sticks out in my mind that's huge. It's one of the biggest hurdles that I think we have to overcome. And that is, we have to learn how to love each other unconditionally. And when I say unconditionally, I mean stop being so divisive from within. For example, if you believe in Jesus, then I got a problem with you. I'm so tired of the people who claim to be woke, attacking their own people because they don't believe the same way that you do. And at the end of the day, if things were to rise up and the races were to divide, it's a numbers game at that point. What difference does it make if he believes in Jesus, you believe in Buddha,
You
this, that?
believe in Santa Claus if you want.
we all should be fighting together and unified. So we have to learn how to love unconditionally and meet each other where we are. At the end of the day, if we're coming together as a people to support, build, defend when necessary, that should supersede all of that other BS that goes on that divides us. And religion isn't the only thing. I think that you see that more so than anything else. So that's the reason why I pointed that out. So that's number one. Number two, if we can get past that and just unify and love unconditionally as a people, then number two would be to scrap the westernized idealism of success. That has been the biggest downfall for us as a people.
Here.
There used to be a time where what set us apart from them was our value system as a people. There were certain things that we used to think was completely and totally beneath us. The ends did not justify the means. But somewhere along the line, because with their control of media and the propaganda and everything that they're putting in your face, they started to feed to us how this just superficial materialistic way in which the average person nowadays, reality TV way of living, number one, the way that they do their relationships with their women and with their family and within their homes, we started to see that as status. We started to see that as success. We started to become what we claimed that we hated. Right. So now when you have the divisiveness amongst our people, when you have us who have just completely and totally subscribed to the westernized idealism of what success is, which completely and totally has made us abandon who we are as a people. When you have those two major things going on, and then we get back to the conversation of reparations, what the heck are we going to do if we get all of these different resources and now we're still going back to what we used to? And that's what, looking to the politicians who work for who? The same government who enslaved us. Right. Then once we do all of that, once we look to them, like we don't know where that's going because it's only been going there for years and years and years and years and years. Now, once we do that, now, if we do happen to get any money, well, now you're going to have everybody fight because you believe in Jesus and I don't.
Right. So we can't even unite our money.
Exactly. Then now you're going to have people wilding out and wasting a bunch of stuff because now they get to personally have things that someone else has told them is a symbol of success. So there's so many different layers to what we need to do as people. But I think that we need to begin by defining success for us. And what success used to be, when you think about Black Wall Street, things like that, what success used to be, it had less to do with the individual and what you could make yourself look like on the exterior to a whole bunch of people who don't even know you. It had less to do with that and about the interior man and woman and who we were and how when we were putting that out into the world, we benefited as a whole, as a people. We have to find a space to get back there or anything else is just going to be temporary. We could run through the land, we could run through the money, we could run through all of that if we don't start to find a sense of who we are and not only who we are as an individual, but value that as a nation. I think that's where we'd have to start.
We might need to.
Can I say something real quick? Fast? What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go get back to what we used to be. We're conditioned to be right now people. And this is why we fail in this Western culture of capitalism. When you look at the Asians and the other groups, they prepare 10, 15, and 20 years in advance. We don't. We do everything for the right now. And because we don't have generations of passing down any type of wealth, we don't have good relationships. And because we don't have good relationships, we don't have intact morality or intact culture that dictates how we treat each other and how we do business as a group, not just in America, but as a group of people. You'll see the Latino community and see how they operate. And I know because I come from both sides. You see the Arab community and you see how they operate. And then you see the Negro community. And you see how we're so quick to sell each other out. We're so quick to go to the other side for acceptance. So I said all that to say, we're going to have to learn and know that there's going to have to be a whole new generation that's going to be raised up. the politicians you see today are not going to be the ones leading the charge. We're going to have to birth a new generation of children and say, well, we got this thought process now, but it's not going to happen. It may not happen 20 or 30 years from now, but it's a process and it has to start in the mind. We have to begin to raise these children up. The problem that we have is we brought into this illusion of inclusion. At that point,
wait, say that again, brother. The illusion of what?
The illusion of inclusion.
Say it for the people in the cheap seats.
We've brought into this situation where we thought that we was included. So now we got to regroup, and we got to see if we had this thought process back in 1988 when the crack era was hitting. If we said, well, damn, you know what, let's get 500,000 black people, and that's not a lot across America, spread out all across America, and let's start raising the different generations of kids with different mindsets. So the next 20 years, when they come out, the same way they got this mulatto agenda now, where you see all these mulattoes coming up, they're not poor. These mulattoes are 19, 20, 25. They all in the NBA. They all in music. Now they just everywhere, right? They prepared that 20 years ago. Those are attempts to breed us out. We don't think like they do. We have to learn to think or say, okay, you know what? We at war. And how are we being attacked? Okay, well, that's my grandbaby right there. I got to train my grandbaby for when she's 25, she has to be thinking the same way I'm thinking, and her movements have to be that of which we taught them. We're not moving like that anymore. We was moving like that during slavery and coming out of slavery because we was under overt racism and we had no choice. Right. Once we got to this fake ass belief that we was a part of something, we threw it all away. So I listen to a lot of politicians, I listen to a lot of people, and I'm saying, bro, you ain't gonna be able to do that right now with a fully integrated and indoctrinated people. Where these people control your food, shelter, and clothing. They got your women, the women that you lay down next to and you put your seeds in. Your woman belongs to him. He gives her the education, you don't. He gives her her paycheck, you don't. So the very woman that all these spiritual books say that the man is the head. So if you say you the head, but your woman got to go to another nation to get economics, then guess what?
What you the head of? You a headless body.
Right, you were already conquered. She's going to always undermine you for her children in that check. You are conquered. So we have to understand this and say we got to develop a whole new thought process. We got to raise up a whole new generation of children, and this is why they set up systems with the prison systems and the crack era and poverty to create single moms. Single moms in the black community is an act of warfare on the black community. A single mom without the balance of that mother and father there for that child to see that balance, they designed that. We don't have a genetic deficiency where we just say, hey, where women just say, hey, I'm gonna be a single mom and I'm not gonna take care of children. No, these are generational designs that they created in order to keep you on a perpetual tailspin so that the system keeps working. So the only way we can break that is to raise up a whole new generations of children. We got to develop a whole new generations of children, the same way the Chinese did when they were bankrupt, and now they're world power again from the 70s into now. They developed a whole new generation of children and start mass producing. We got to get our heads out of our behinds, and we got to realize as men, first of all, we got to take our women back from them, because our women are, regardless of whether we like it or not, the black woman belongs to the white man in this culture. We do not, we don't control our woman. He does, because he provides everything for her.
The provider.
Get our women back, and then we gotta deprogram and raise our children up over again.
All right, somebody's vibrating.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh.
I'm muting up.
All right, so
and I think too. I'm sorry, bro. I didn't.
No, go ahead. I was going to give you the floor anyway because I want you to be able to leave when you're ready to leave, and I want to hold you hostage.
I'd love to stay longer. I really would. I'll say this, and then I got to jet out. I hear a lot of times about what other cultures have done and what they've been able to do, for and with their people and with their nations, and an uncomfortable truth is that they were able to do that because none of them were enslaved. They had the option to do that. Now, is that an excuse for us? No. It's just a space from which we can start. We have to understand that there have been lots. That's what indoctrination means. And exactly what you were saying, George, the fact that this system was set up for Black women to become single mothers and become reliant upon a system. All of this was by design. And that's the reason why this talk of reparations is so multi-layered. It's so multi-layered because it's affected us in the trickle down in so many different ways. We have to be real, not making excuses, because I'm not about making excuses, but we have to be real from which we would be starting, from where we need to begin in order to begin to flourish independently as a people. And I say independent loosely, because at the end of the day, once all this is said and done, you're still in their government. You still have their social security number stamped on you. You're still a part of their tax system. You're still a part of everything that's going on with them. So I say that loosely. But in order for us to begin to have a space to build from a healthy foundation, we have to be real about where we're starting from, to start to unravel some of everything that's been going on within the Black nation, and also too how we have in a lot of ways sold out. In some ways it was by design. We really didn't know that we were selling out. A lot of the women that ended up on welfare to feed their children, it's because of the way the prison industry was designed to incarcerate our men. So some things we kind of sort of couldn't help, but then there are other things that we could have helped, that we could have turned, that we could have walked away from. So that real discussion, closed door, where it's just us and our community and where we're starting from and building from there, I think that's going to be really important. And it can't be with comparing us to other people who did not start from where we're starting from. I think that's an unfair comparison to make. So that's all I have to say to that.
That's all you got tonight, Sister T?
For now. For now.
Right. Well, I appreciate you jumping on with us tonight. Brother George, you as well, but Sister T, I know you gotta go, Terlin. So
yep.
I definitely appreciate you jumping on with us tonight on this impromptu what's going on with the $100 billion in reparations on the line. Yeah, okay. But
Wait,
I definitely
actually,
appreciate
I hate that I'm leaving because I didn't get your final figures.
Well, you're gonna have to watch the end of the replay when
I'm gonna check the replay. I'm gonna check the replay, I always do.
But I'll give you this before you go. So the hard figures actually come out to, with all the back wages, using a 0.25% interest rate on the annual balance. The figures came out to, at the end of slavery, with those figures I gave earlier in the video. You'll have to watch the beginning if you don't know what those are. With the figures that I gave, the ending balance for slavery when slavery ended in 1865 was $666.7 billion that would have been owed in back wages and in interest. Because that balance was never paid and you just do the interest going forward, that balance actually would be closer to $976.9 billion. So almost $1 trillion in interest and back wages that were not done. So when you say, even just from that perspective alone, what is $100 billion? It's about a tenth of what is actually owed in a conservative estimate based on the spreadsheet that I created. So that's what the figures came out to. A tenth is like saying you get 1% for, so going back, I like Cousin Moses's numbers. You get 12 cents an hour for that $1 a day. And that just really is not going to help any African-American family. Even when you put an average family size of 4 people together, what's that? 48 cents an hour that you're going to get for a total of about $1,000 for the month before taxes. That's not going to make or break an African-American family. And if anything, that family is going to have to use that resource immediately to survive on today, rather than having that money as stockpiled and getting that money as interest to where it is continual for the duration of generations to come. So that's what the numbers actually came out to.
Wow. And I want to say this for real before I leave. If anything is going to be offered, it must be tax-free. You can't pay reparations and then keep a portion of it in taxes, because it's really like you're not paying it then.
Right. You might as well just give it tax-free and don't include the amount that you would have taken in taxes.
There you go. There you go. But guys, it's been a pleasure. As always, Ro, you know I'm here.
Salute to you. You definitely a
Yeah.
soldier. I appreciate you.
Thank you guys. Have a good night. I'll
All
catch
right.
the replay.
All right. Good night, Charlie.
All right, good night.
Cousin Mo, what you got? You've been silent for a while, brother. Come back in.
Yeah, man. So there's a lot, man. There is a lot. First and foremost, those numbers are just on wages, right? Can you still hear me, Cousin Ro?
I can still hear you. And yes, those are just on wages.
So we're not even talking about the investment, right? You remember we were talking earlier. I was like, so what happens if that man takes that $1 a day and then he buys a pickaxe? And that pickaxe then enables his productive capacity to do 4 times as much labor on his own route. So now he's producing more labor. His $1 a day could then turn into $4 a day. And then not just him, but everybody who was smart enough to buy a pickaxe. Those are the paradigm shifts that happen in an economy. So such as Brother George pointed out, when people had to migrate, if there was a big flood in the Mississippi Delta or whatever that causes people to leave. That's one point. So those paradigm shifts, those commodities, those changes in the things that were happening even throughout those wars that needed to be fought. So they needed to feed more people. And so then this product becomes the more go-to product rather than this product. And then having access to those markets undiscriminated and unmolested. The next one, though, and this one is the one, Brother George will remember when I tried to trace back my family history name, those different businesses in international trade, the Royal African Caribbean Company out of Britain, that was one of the big ones, and how they were going up against the other major global factors at the time in order to make this transatlantic slave trade work. We have to remember that one of the major commodities that they already had was, in the agricultural space, but potatoes. It's very cold up there. And so they need a root crop that grows underneath the ground. And because it was potatoes that was their staple crop, they needed something to complement that in their times of war. They would have literally starved to death had it not been for those off of the coast of Sierra Leone, those agriculturalists who were able to produce rice. And that's the Geechee family in South Carolina and those folks. I mean, so if they couldn't feed themselves, they couldn't clothe themselves, they couldn't get these commodities, they couldn't lay down the foundations for those cities that they've been able to benefit. Now, we know cities are the thing that give you the multiplier effect, right? So now your residents can live a little bit longer under better conditions, under better shelter. They're not in a rural space. They have the convenience of more people in a smaller area. So now if I need anything, I don't have to just try to get it myself. We can specialize. I have a neighbor who's no longer 5 miles away, but we're all in a central location to where they can fish and I can do the crops and things like that. That type of relationship that doesn't account for just what my labor is, that was burned away and stripped away from us at the bequest of the government. And so there are so many other factors that would make that $1 trillion balloon. And those balloon payments are the thing that, they're not going to want to be accountable for. Patents that had been created, they don't want to be accountable for the theft of and the piracy rights and the intellectual property. There are the families that were stripped away, the murder and the chasing down of the fugitives, as they so called them, that they don't want to be accountable for. The businesses that would have been allowed to benefit from those, the trade and commerce, but there was the Plessy versus Ferguson case or the Separate Cars Act, even in Louisiana and other southern states. The rights of marriage and being able to invest in a family or nuclear family to create families, even in those times when we were agrarian. And so our children would have also been able to have their productive capacity realized on those farms or in those conditions to build better houses and such. All of these other issues that would have increased our likelihood of success had we had our rights unabridged and unmolested. So there are a lot of ideas. 1820, Madison said Monrovia. What was it? Was it Monroe? Sorry, what was it? Monroe, the President Monroe, who said, let's open up some land in Africa, and the capital became Monrovia. And then likewise, like 100 years later, they did the same thing with the Jews. It's not unprecedented for a president to assign some land that can be contributed or distributed to a group of select people. And I'm going to end on that.
All right. Hey, no, you're right there. But people choose which precedents they want to set and how they want to apply that precedence. Brother George, what do you got to say in your closing thoughts?
Moses got to bring you over to the channel, man. We got to get you at least 100 subscribers, man.
Oh, hey, I'm down for it. We working to grow first row over here. So
me and Moses, we do all the live streams together, all my live streams together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, next time we go on, make sure you subscribe. It's just George Macon. We'll bring you on. We actually can do a reparations show on my channel, and when you come in, I can get Moses and some of the our moderators to drop your link to your channel in a thing, and we can get you some subscribers.
Okay, yes, sir.
50. We can get you some subscribers over here. I can see you trying to get some good stuff going on.
Yeah, we're working to build a brand here, but it's there's tons of things that are going to be coming down the pipeline for the first row this year, and I'm just, like I said, I want to have meaningful conversations that are going to promote growth. Not all my topics are about the Black community. Overall, many of my topics are about just growth in general, and inclusive of every person that is interested in growth. And that kind of goes back to what you said, is like, look, I can't wake everybody up, and I'm not running around here with an alarm clock to do so. However, for those people who are willing to wake up and start pushing themselves to higher levels and higher heights, I'm definitely willing to work with those people and hopefully present messages that resonate with them, that force some of the growth that I had to go through as I'm going through my own life experiences. So I definitely appreciate you for coming on. You did not make me regret bringing on somebody I've never had a conversation with. I appreciate that. And that goes to speak that we got to be able to trust our people. I see this big swole dude on this picture, and it's like, I'm like, oh shoot, this man over here is connected on YouTube from Staten Island. But the reality is it's like there's so many of us that have these deep conversations and this deep desire, not only just to connect to our own culture and our own people, but this deep desire to truly grow and have these types of meaningful conversations. And we really got to start breaking out of just being on social media and YouTube for the sole purpose of entertainment. It's what can we do to really expand upon the growth of our people, the growth of people, because in all fairness, even with just the growth of the Black man and the Black woman and the Black family, you're going to have to have that healthy negotiation. You're going to have to find allies of other races and other cultures in order to be successful. And so I just, like I said, I'm definitely happy to come over to your channel and play on your playground by whatever rules you have set. You'll establish, and I will abide by those rules, like the domino table. If we at your house playing dominoes, house rules call the shots. So yeah, I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you some subscribers, bro.
Yes, sir. Let's see. I want to see anything else in the chat because we're going to go ahead and wrap it for the night. Step away for a moment. I understand what you're saying, Terrellyn's gone, Kate. We are a very unique group. I think George made a reference to 2 million of us going to Africa to rebuild our economy in a nation outside of the United States. No, that is something I've never heard about before, outside of the
Pan-Africanism.
Thank you, Pan-Africanism. As far as going there, not from a Pan-Africanism methodology, but going there to establish this chain, really this trade tunnel of, we have a place in the United States and we have a place in Africa, and we are equally and equitably supported.
We got to negotiate and realize that. See, this is the thing. We're in America and we're integrated here. We got interracial relationships. We got mixed babies. We got everything. Like, we've been here. So if America falls, we in trouble too. So America's interest is our interest as well. So now you got Asia and all in Africa with their own interests. So, and there's a race for resources. Who you think gonna treat the Africans better, us or other groups coming in? Who you think they would rather have? Us. So if we asking for reparations, we got to ask for all of those things, but we need, like America does with everybody. They train the Palestinians, they train the Iranians, they train the Iraqs. We need trained Black Negro soldiers returning to Africa on land, in a specified place in Africa where we can do our business and do our bidding. And a lot of people might not like it, but see, I'm a former hustler. I know how to negotiate at the table. Protect America's interest, because America's interest is our interest right now, unfortunately. and now, if America ever falls, we still got 2 million people in Africa developing where we can stand on our own now. But if we don't get into Africa, protecting our own interests, then kingdoms rise and fall. They're not built to last forever.
Right.
So we got to negotiate at the table of saying we want to go back. We want to send this portion back. We want to get in control of this. And if you send us back, we'll make sure the Chinese won't come in and impede on this. That'll be the deal. We'll protect this for you while you allow us to build up our economics here. You got to negotiate. Everybody negotiates. Slavery happened. We are never going to go back and redo slavery. But what we can do is say, you did this to me. Now, if you want to pay me back, this is what I need. But if I go here, I know you have interest there. We have interest as well. We got to stop thinking that, get this Freddy Krueger effect out your mind. You can't dream because the minute you dream, Freddy there to kill it. So now you die. No, we got to be able to go to places and go at the table and say, this is what we want, and uncompromising. Other groups do it. We got to be able to do it. How you think places like Iraq and some of these places grew to prominence? They was trained by U.S. soldiers because U.S. soldiers had interest in those regions. When the Ayatollah in Iran was in power, who you think trained the soldiers to go against them? American, right. The government.
Right, guerrilla warfare tactics, America.
Right. So we're in a perfect timing right now as a people to say, this is what we want, this is what we need. This is what we need. So now, if you got a problem with the Chinese being there, train up 500,000 American soldiers, and send some black political and economic and business people there to go create and build, and get an economic interest there. And then the thing is, when you got us there, black people, black African people returning, it's easier to get shit done than some Chinese people just coming in. But we gotta think. We can't think emotionally. Oh, we can't trust this white man. It ain't about trust. This is business. This is business. And I'll just say this: even with them, it was always business. See, they don't have the resources where they come from that you have. And if you study their history, they have a history of being barbarians. And that's not a knock. That's not dissing them. They were barbarians.
Right.
They were
rape, pillage, regular.
So now when that group of people who have lack of resources and their way of survival was to kill something, they literally had to be hunter-gatherers, go kill something in order to eat. When you take that group of people and they meet the African people in a warm climate where stuff is growing out of the land, they're sharing, what you think going to happen? That's not going to be a good situation because we don't live the same way. So we end up calling them a devil. But the thing that we call them a devil for, they call it conquering. They call it survival.
Right.
So they don't see nothing wrong in what they're doing because that's just the way they always lived. So that once we understand what we're dealing with, negotiate. Understand what you're dealing with. Get out of the emotionalism. And I just think that like we operate from too much emotionalism. It clouds us from being able to it actually puts us further and further into the sunken place. We got to sit down at the table and say, this is what we want. And they're going to say, well, why should we give you this? Because you're losing your grip on this. And we can help you with this if you help us with this. That's what we got to do. And you got to get these politicians out because these politicians is bought and paid for.
Right. Well, I don't think that the political platforms are necessarily the most effective way to try to change. If they were the most effective way to try to change what's going on in the Black community, we would have started to see progress already. And I can't say that we've seen a whole lot of progress. We have seen drug usage, I think, as a whole go down. I would have to do more research to get the numbers on it. But from the neighborhood that I grew up in, I've seen drug usage go down. And obviously that's an isolated experience trying to speak for the nation. But I do know there's still places where you can buy, rocks on the corner and get whatever it is you're looking for. I mean, and as things go further into it, we don't even want to, I'm not even going to get into tonight, but we're not going to go into the pharmaceutical industry and how that industry has also pushed into a second layer of poison into the community. I'm not talking about people who are sick who are using medicine to try to get better. I'm talking about that leftover prescription that goes for $20, $40 a pill. So there's definitely a ton of stuff that we could touch on tonight. I just wanted to get on though tonight and talk about, like I said, the 100 billion, how laughable that is when you start breaking down the figures. And I liked, Brother George, that you came on tonight to talk about some potential strategies. They may resonate with some people. They may not resonate with some people. I'm all right with a diverse mindset. I think that diversity allows for a true solution to be established and to move forward in. So I definitely, for those who've joined in on tonight's special first row, what's going on? I don't know how often we'll have these, but if there's something that moves me in the news or in the media, that I just feel like that needs to be said. Sometimes instead of posting a long, lengthy Facebook written posts, I will jump on the first row and jump out with these contents. So I appreciate you guys for supporting us tonight. Other than that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all the support in the chat. If you're watching on the replay, please jump in on the comments on the replay. We'll engage with you on the back end of there as well. Brother George, I'm going to hold you to be bringing me over to your channel, and we'll see what we can get going over there. But other than that, if you like this video, please share it. If you share it, please like it. Happy to engage with you in the comments or the live chat. Until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless.